We went deep there, but I think it's going to be a big eye opener for a lot of people that are tracking this wrong, because it was an eye opener to me, right? And most of the systems you use, even the one that we use, it tracks it the traditional way, which is wrong.
Because that's the other way is very difficult to track.
Much more complicated. We learned it from Zillow. When we realized how Zillow was tracking stuff, like I was like, holy shit, that makes so much sense. Like, we've been doing this wrong for the last 15 years.
Yeah, at first it's annoying. You're like, why are you making me do it this way? And then you go, oh, because it's right.
That actually makes sense. Yeah. Welcome to the Whissel Way Podcast. My name is Kyle Whissel, your host with eXp Realty in San Diego.
And my name is Bryan Koci, Director of Media here at Whissel Realty Group.
The goal of the show is to give you the tools, techniques, and tactics to go out there and crush it in your business. The way that we like to do that is to answer the questions that you have for us. The way that we like to get those questions is by you submitting them to us. So you can always go to thewhisselway.com. You can ask us questions on there. Subscribe to the podcast and YouTube channels. You can join our referral network, our email newsletter, and our private Facebook group to get some tips and tricks of what we're working on. And get dialed in with our video content creation course called the Media Mayor Mastermind, where we'll teach you everything we've learned about shooting thousands of videos with millions of views over the last 7 years, and put it in a nice little course for you that you can watch at your leisure. So all of that is available at thewhisselway.com. And if you enjoy the show today, if you're watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up button, let YouTube know. Also, hit the subscribe button, little notification bell, so you get notified when we release future episodes of the show. And if you have some questions about the content from the day, throw that in the comments section. And last, if you are listening on a podcast platform, hook us up with a review on there. Really goes a long way to help share the show with others, which is the goal of the show. We want to help as many realtors around the world as we possibly can. With that said, Bryan, what's the topic today?
Today we're going to talk about numbers. One of your favorite topics.
Yeah.
And before I tell you kind of where I want to go with it, I want you to do your normal little riff on the importance of knowing your numbers and that whole spiel.
Yeah. No shit. Know your numbers. It matters.
Oh, okay. Now my turn.
I mean, if you don't know the numbers in your business, you don't know what needs work in your business, right? Like, if every time you have an issue with your car, you don't take it in the dealership and be like, tear my entire car apart, right? Like, you're like, oh, there's a weird sound coming from the front right corner. Okay, cool. Now we know where to look to find the problem. But if you were like, yeah, I don't know what's wrong with the car, just tear it apart until you find a problem. Like, holy shit, right? Like,
hey, the back tire's still flat. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, you got to have an idea. The best analogy I can give is hose, right? Like, if you're gonna feed leads and business into a hose, and ideally it comes out the other end of the hose, but if it doesn't come out the other end of the hose, it's usually because there's a kink in the hose. Well, let's figure out where the kink is in the hose and let's unkink it. Mm-hmm. And the best way to do that,
or there's a hole in the hose.
Could be a hole in the hose. I mean, if your hose gets too old, that could happen. Or you bought a cheap hose at Harbor Freight, that could be a possibility. I was just in the desert and with a bunch of guys that have these $50,000 plus off-road cars, and they're talking about tools and Harbor Freight. I'm like, what are you guys talking about?
I love Harbor Freight.
Yeah, but you're bro, you're gonna
I'm a different
screw in a knob on a cabinet that gets loose. Maybe
I'll call a handyman for that.
We're talking about
I understand.
Literally $50,000 off-road cars, and you're buying a $2 fucking screwdriver. Mm-hmm. Come on, boy, step it up. So just back to the subject is we just got to know where the kink in the hose is, and one of the best ways to do that is to know our numbers. So when we're looking at things, we realize all right, the lead came in, we set the appointment. Oh, well, none of our appointments are showing up. We're setting appointments, but they're not showing up. Cool, that's the kink. Let's work on that so we can release the kink and get the deal's flowing again.
I feel like that's an album title, Release the Kink. I feel like that could be all sorts of different things.
Next time you start a band. Fun fact, Bryan used to be in a band, a ska band of all
The funny thing is, I literally went to dinner last night, and I sat next to a guy while we were waiting for our table. He goes, is your name Bryan? I'm like, yeah. He goes, I was in the band. I was the guitar player. I'm like, no shit.
Yeah, the band Released the Kink.
Yeah, it wasn't that one. But that's not a bad name. like in Parks and Rec. Band name, I called it. Okay, so if you're listening to this right now, you've heard this spiel before from your coach, your team leader, your podcast. You've heard this spiel over and over and over. You have to know your numbers. You have to know your numbers. I want to break this into 3 different kind of categories and figure out what we need to know. What are our most important numbers to know in these categories? Our KPIs, perhaps. So the 3 categories that I can think of is the activities you do as an agent, right? Things that help drive production. What numbers do you need to know for that? What numbers do you need to know in terms of your money? And then third, if you have agents working with you or for you, what numbers do you need to know as kind of a team leader?
Okay. Well, let's start at the top of the funnel, which is the money that you're spending.
Okay, so we're going to do the money one first.
We can go money first.
Cool.
Yeah, because you got to, before we even worry about like dials and conversations and all that, let's talk about like how are we going to generate leads to dial. So this is the one that blows my fucking mind. Like how many people have no clue how much money they're spending and what their return on investment is. It's truly mind-boggling to me. And I've seen people on stage that don't know this, right? They'll go up and be like, yeah, we did a $250,000 in GCI from X source last year.
Because that is a sexy title, man.
I don't want to bash on anybody, but like that's sexy, right? Like how did I generate $250,000 in GCI from X source? And then they'll tell you, oh, I did this and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, 250, cool. Then you talk to them after and it's like, hey, out of curiosity, like what's your spend with them? $20,000 a month. Okay. Dot the I, cross the T, carry. Oh, so you spent $240,000 to do $250,000 in GCI, and then you had a split with your broker, and you had some fees, and maybe you spent just a tiny bit of time running around doing all these, showing all these properties, doing all these deals. Like you lost money, dipshit. Like it's amazing to me how many people have no clue that they're losing money in a lot of these lead sources that they're investing into.
But hey, they made $250K GCI on that lead source. That is a true statement.
It is.
They didn't retain, but that's fine.
They generated $250,000
yes.
in GCI. Yeah.
Okay, so you need to know what your ROI per lead source.
Yeah, and so this one I'll challenge you. This is gonna blow a few of your minds right now. We, up until a year ago, we're completely mistracking this stuff. And I think virtually all of us mistrack this. The way that most of us track this is, let's just say we're spending $20,000 a month on lead source X. And so what we do at the end of the month, we look at this report and we're like, all right, well, I spent $20,000. And then let's just say that generated 20 leads. So I paid $1,000 a lead. And that brought in $25,000 in commission. Cool. So therefore, my return on investment is whatever. I think it's 80%.
You made $5,000.
Yeah, you made $5,000. I'm not going to get into the numbers because my brain's pretty fried already. It's cool. We got to shoot like 6 more videos today. So that actually doesn't make sense to track that way, because what you got to realize is the 20 leads that you generated for the $20,000 have virtually no correlation to the $25,000 in GCI that came in. The reason is
almost like zero.
There could be a fluky scenario where you got a lead came in, all cash, wrote an offer, closed the same month. But 99% of the time, those 20 leads that came in this month, best case, one's converting next month. Most likely case, they're converting like 6 months out.
Yep.
So what you've actually got to do is look back. We're starting to look back at a 6-month look back. So let's look back at June. And how much did we spend in June? Okay, we spent the same $20,000. Cool. Well, how many leads did we generate in June? We generated 40 leads, right? Lead flow went up in June. So we had 40 leads. All right. Of those specific 40, how many of those converted? And what was the GCI from those? Because that's how we're actually going to figure out the true return on investment. Because now we're looking at the 40 leads that came in June that we spent $20,000 on. Well, let's look at how many of those have converted. Now we're actually nailing down what our true ROI is. But what most of us are doing is we spent 20,000 last month. We got 25,000 that came in. That's the return. Well, that 25,000 that came in GCI, that might have been your leads from June. Those actually should be attributed to June, not to last month. And I think most people do not do this. They don't understand it. They'll try to argue it other ways. But if you want to truly track your money, it's right. If I bought a fucking stock in June, like I'm looking at what it paid in June, not like what did it go up last month. Last month's irrelevant. I bought it in June at this price. Where is it at today? That's how I figure out my return on investment based on what I bought it for in June, not what it was last month.
I think the only way you can use the traditional way of looking at it is if, one, your spend never changes, two, your lead flow never changes, and three, the quality of lead never changes. If all three of those are constant, then you can look at it this way. But we know for a fact that those three are never going to be completely constant. You're going to spend more, you're going to spend less. They're going to give you more leads, or you're going to have to pay more or less per lead. And then as more competitors are coming in, some competitors are going to be better. There's no way you can keep it constant. Even if you say, well, I spend 20 grand every month and I get 20 leads every month, the quality of those leads can drastically change. So you can't say lead source X, that the 20 grand I spent now is good until they follow through. So, okay. That one's...
we went deep there, but I think it's going to be a big eye-opener for a lot of people that are tracking this wrong. Because it was an eye-opener to me, right? And most of the systems you use, even the one that we use, it tracks it the traditional way, which is wrong.
Because that's... The other way is very difficult to track.
Much more complicated. We learned it from Zillow. When we realized how Zillow was tracking stuff, like, I was like, holy shit, that makes so much sense. Like, we've been doing this wrong for the last, 15 years.
Yeah, at first it's annoying. You're like, why are you making me do it this way? And then you go, oh, because it's right.
That actually makes sense. Yeah, my return on investment. Thinking about a stock is the best way to do it, right? Mm-hmm. If I bought a stock in June, and I look, I'm looking at what did I pay in June, not what did I pay last month. So that's a big eye opener. So you really got to understand, right? How much did I spend? How many leads did I generate? So now I know my cost per lead. Then I want to look at what is my conversion rate, and ultimately what is my return on investment. And then if you want to go one step further, you can look at what's your cost per sale. So now if you actually really go deep in numbers, that's a whole nother level. It's probably beyond most agents. Mm-hmm. But the other numbers I gave you, so total investment, number of leads generated, cost per lead, and conversion rate, return on investment. Those 5 are probably the key things to track for 99% of the agents listening.
Cool. Okay. That covers the money portion of it. And again, we can go down rabbit holes and do this, what's your gross commission, what's your net commission, how much do you do for save? I mean, we can go, you can KPI yourself to death, and I want to caution you against that.
I would tell you though, if there is any numbers you're gonna go hard on, it's these.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Because these are the most important numbers. Right? Are you actually making money? Because here's the thing, I guess we need to hit on this before we move on, is the pump it or dump it exercise. Yep. So anything we do, we always give it at least 12 months. We don't shit can anything unless we've given it a full 12-month run. That way we at least have a large enough sample size we can decide if something makes sense or not.
And it gives us the opportunity to update it if we need to, right? Yeah. It could be our fault. We did something wrong for 3 months, and then we changed how we do the marketing or whatever, and then, okay.
I mean, we got a source. We're getting a lot of seller leads, and we've shifted the approach with those, and we're actually starting to get a much better conversion. So you're always going to be tweaking things along the way, which is why you look at it on a monthly basis. But I want to give everything at least a 12-month run before I decide if I'm going to get rid of it. So what I like to do at the end of every year is take a report of all these things and go through a pump it or dump it exercise. Got this from a radio station I used to listen here in San Diego. They'd play a new song and people would call in and be like, pump it, that shit is tight. And then, oh, dump it, that's garbage. So we do the same thing with our lead sources. Now let's look at
Kyle
the numbers.
Called in a couple times.
Oh yeah. So now we look at the numbers, and now you decide, pump it or dump it. Did you actually get a really solid return on this investment? Cool, let's pump it. Let's double down, triple, quadruple. Let's 5x the spend on that. If it's making good money, let's pump it. Right. At the same time, if you're this person who spent $20,000 a month on lead source X and you ended up losing you think you made 250,000 at the end of the year, but now you factor in your splits and your expenses and everything else, you realize you actually lost money. Like maybe you dump that lead source and reallocate that 20 to other things, or just eliminate it off your bottom line. So that pump it or dump it exercise could be really valuable.
Cool. All right, let's go to the next one. If you're an agent, what numbers are you tracking? And we've done this. We've tracked literally every number, and we've done a lot of things wrong. I think we're better now. I don't know if we're perfect, but we've tracked how many phone calls are you doing. We've tracked how much talk time are you having. We've tracked how many open houses. We've tracked how many times you're reaching out to. Like, we've tracked everything you can think of, right? And we have at times KPI'd our agents to death. Mm-hmm. Like that's not something we're like, yeah, we're perfect on this, right? We've done it. You probably done it. You might be doing it now. And you say, oh, I want to know how many open houses and how many people per open house and how many follow-ups per person per open house. And you have 20 numbers for open houses, and then you do it for every, like, it can get ridiculous. So what are the key numbers if you're an agent in production that you should be looking at to see if things are working or not?
Yeah, so I think less is more when it comes to this. If you try to track too much, you're probably not tracking anything at all. So it's like you talk about with camera equipment, right? Like the more camera equipment you have, the less videos you'll shoot. Like I feel like this is the same thing. The more you track, the less you'll actually do. What we've boiled it down to at this point is just starting at the appointments set. So we used to track how many dials. We used to track how many conversations. But then the problem is, especially when you're doing it across a team, is, well, who the hell are you dialing? Are you dialing the same people that I'm dialing? Because if you're circle dialing and I'm calling my sphere, like I'm probably going to have way less dials than you. Does that mean that I'm not as good as you because you got 1 million dials? But then if we look, my conversations are through the roof.
Yep.
My talk time is through the roof, and you're just getting a bunch of fuck yous, right? Like, so now I start to look better because I have more talk time and more conversations, but you had more dials, right? It gets wonky when you start to track that stuff. So, and like we talked about with the numbers, like unless you and I are calling the same list all the time, the same hours of the day, like it's not the ideal metric. So we just have shrunk it down to starting at appointment set. So we're looking at appointment set, appointments met, agreement signed, under contract, and closed. Appointment set, appointment met, agreement signed, under contract, closed. Those are the metrics that we look at. And then now that's the hose, right? Now we figure out where's the kink in the hose. So if we're setting a lot of appointments and the number that are met is very low, now we realize, like, all right, we got to work on, like, what are we saying when we're setting these appointments? Like, are we actually building value around the appointment? Or are we just getting, like, mercy appointments, which happens? Because sometimes people will just, like, sure, I'll meet with you, dude. Whatever gets me off this damn call. Like, that's a mercy appointment. And we need to look at, like, what's happening from the time we set the appointment to the time we meet with it. All right, cool. Well, I'll meet you at the property tomorrow at 4. And then, we never do anything. Like, we didn't send a calendar invite. We didn't send a video to introduce ourselves. We did nothing. Like, of course they're not going to show. They have no reason to. Then we'll look at, okay, well, let's say the appointment's set to met as a good ratio. Now we're looking at met to signed. So signed on a buyer side would be a buyer broker agreement, or we call it a VIP agreement. On the seller side would be a listing agreement. Well, if we're meeting with people and we're not actually getting agreements signed, like, well, let's dig into that. Why is that not happening, right? Maybe we need to work on our presentation. So we need to role play our listing presentation or our buyer consultation or our driveway consult. Like, let's role play through that. If we're getting agreements signed, but we're not getting contracts, let's work through that. If we're getting, contracts, but we're not getting closings, let's work through that, right? It helps us figure out where do we have room to improve. But those are the 5 key metrics that we're tracking.
This was brought up in our leadership meeting a couple days ago. Actually, I think right before it started. And I thought it was really interesting. It made me start to think about it. It gets frustrating when you look at it and be like, man, I suck here. Or then you go, oh no, I suck here. What tracking your numbers will allow you to do is see where the kink is. And there's always going to be a number that's lower than you want it to be. There's always going to be a number that you say, okay, I'm going to focus my energy on this, and that will lift it all up. And so I'm one that I want to say, okay, it's fixed, it's done, move on, it's perfect. But it's never going to be perfect. There's always going to be kind of ebbs and flows. So looking at those numbers and saying, okay, I'm going to fix this now, and bringing that number up from 50 to 75. And once then you find another gap and you say, oh, well, that wasn't the kink. This was really the first kink, but now this is the second one. And you could bring all the numbers up eventually. And then when you bring them all up, that first number that was 75, you go, well, that's shit. I want it to be 90%. And so you just consistently bring little by little each step up till you get, you can't ever perfect it, right? You just make it better.
Yep.
So, okay, those are great numbers. If you're in production, if you're an agent, and you say, what do I need to focus on? Cool. As a team leader, you manage a team here. We have a bunch of agents. We have yearly 3-year goal, 5-year goals. What numbers do we look at as either you as a team or at us as a leadership team? What numbers are important for us to look at to make sure that the health of our team is where it needs to be?
So we do have a minimum standard to be a part of Whissel Realty Group, and that standard for us is that you're doing an average of 1 transaction a month. And we look at that on a quarterly basis. So we're looking at your trailing 90 days and how many transactions did you close during those 90 days. We do it on a 90-day period or quarterly, however you want to look at it, period, versus a monthly. Because if you come in and you close like 5 deals in a month, and then you close 0 deals the following month, like I'm not firing you.
No.
Like we're not going to exit business with each other because you close 0 a month after closing 5.
Yeah, you need a break.
Like you maybe go on a vacation or you got COVID or something, right? Like, but if we do it on a 90-day, that's going to balance everything out and deal with the ebbs and the flows of the industry. Understand when I say 1 a month, you got to relate this to your market. 1 a month is, let's call it $10 million a year in San Diego. So if somebody in San Diego is selling 12 homes a year, they're going to be somewhere in the 9 to 10 million a year range. So the thing that I've found is it's all about volume, right? So break that down. Let's assume 10 million is your target volume. Well, how many deals is that per month in your market? If you're in a $100,000 market, that's going to be a lot more.
Yep.
But if you're in a $100,000 market, you don't have nearly the number of agents that we have here.
I think I was talking to someone, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think we have more agents in San Diego than they do their state. Or maybe I might have been talking to someone from Canada. I think we might have more agents in California than they do in Canada. Or
country.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, there's a different level of competition there.
Yeah, we have over 30,000 agents just in San Diego County. And there's only like 35,000 transactions a year that happen, right? So do the math on that. The average agent's closing like less than 3 deals a year. And that's what we're looking for.
With that number, the average agent's doing just over 1 a year.
There's 2 sides.
Okay.
So it ends up being like 2 point something.
Okay.
It's crazy, right? So that's one. That's kind of the underlying one, and we will exit business with somebody if they're not hitting that standard. The other things that we look at are the things that we know are going to move the needle when it comes to their skill set. So we're looking for them to phone role play. We're looking for them to in-person role play, which, right, we talked about, like if you're meeting with appointments, you're not getting agreements signed. Like that's why we role play the presentation in person. We're looking at how many open houses they hold. Open houses are just a proven winner for us here in San Diego. Anytime I can stand in a house and have people walk through the door and shake my hand and we can have a face-to-face conversation, like I'm all in on that. We look at how many huddles they get on. So every morning we have a huddle, 15 minutes, and half of it is just to get people's ass out of bed and on a Zoom at 8:15 in the morning. The other half of it is we want to add a little value every day and just make them, if we can just help people get like 1% better every day, like what's the effect, over the course of a year, right?
That's a lot.
Even we can make a 1/10%, still over the course of a year, we're going to make that person, significantly better. And that's the other half of the huddle is let's just add like one little thing, just 1%, 1/10%. It's going to really move the needle over the course of time. So it's
36% better. Is it the 10th of a percent?
Yeah, even 10%. It's massive.
That's huge.
Yeah.
If I can be 36% better at anything, yes, I want to do it.
Yeah, and by spending 15 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Think about that. What if we actually just fucking worked out every day for 15 minutes?
We'd probably all
be.
Thank you for coming to the Whissel Way Podcast. I'm going to go eat some ice cream. The end.
So huddles, role plays in person, role plays on the phone. We're looking at open houses and
team meetings.
Meetings, coming into our office meetings is the other one. So we do a meeting once a week. And so the thing that we do too is if an agent's production is higher, we have lower expectations of them Because if you're out there and you're selling like 30, 40 million a year, like I don't need you on the role play every single day. If you're selling no homes, I need you on the role play every day because we got to
3 times
level
a
up
day.
your skills. We need to level your skills up, right? So we loosen up the expectations on how often the agents do these things based on their production.
Makes sense. Cool. That's all I got.
All right. Well, hopefully you guys got some value out of that. We'll dive into our widget of the week here in a minute. But before we do, if you're enjoying the show, watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up button, let them know. Also hit that subscribe button and little notification bell. That'll notify you every time we drop a new episode. And if you want some further clarification, have some questions from today's show, you can throw those in the comment section. We respond to all of the comments that come in. Brian, I think, gets to them before I ever can.
I try to.
He's on top of it.
We've been getting more and more. It's cool to see those comments really get popping off.
So we love to see stuff in the comments. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, hook us up with a review. That'll help spread the word about the show so we can help impact more agents. And if you have questions you want to have answered on a future episode of the show, you can always go to thewhisselway.com, thewhisselway.com. Ask us questions, subscribe to the podcast and YouTube channel, join our referral network, email newsletter, and private Facebook group where we share a lot of tips and tricks. And get dialed in with our Media Mayor Mastermind course, which is all about video content creation. It's half price right now.
Yes, sir.
We are running a half price special on that. So make sure to jump on that too, get a discount while it lasts, and we'll teach you everything we've learned about creating video over the last 7 years, put it into a nice little shortcut for you so you can get up to speed and get going a whole lot faster. As we wrap up, we like to dive into something we call our Whissel widget of the week. This is something we utilize in our business. It saves us time, makes us more money, or just helps us have more fun. What do you got, Brian?
So you mentioned earlier one of my favorite phrases: the more gear you have, the less video you'll shoot. If you don't believe me, or you believe me and just don't care, I'm going to share my widget with you. So this is something we just got about a week or two ago. And it allows you to have that nice smooth footage when filming. And so we've talked about gimbals in the past. There's a bunch of them out there. But I just bought the DJI Osmo Mobile 5. They're probably coming out with the 6 any second now. But this one's really cool. Got a couple really cool things about it that the last one I had was the first version. So this one's much newer. One is you can easily film vertically, which is great. The first one wasn't built for that at all. So you can film vertically. They have it built to where the gimbal isn't in the shot when you're filming. So that's great. Two, I always thought this was kind of kitschy and kind of stupid, but I actually really like it. It turns it into a selfie stick. And so it doesn't extend as far as I thought. I thought it was going to give like a 6-foot extension. I don't know why.
It's like a foot or two.
Yeah, because selfie sticks are like, but it has like between a foot or 1 and 2 feet, I think, of an extension. But it's kind of cool to get some shots from up above, just with a little bit of extension looking straight down. I think they're like $150, $160. If you want it, I was just talking to an agent today, and utilizing something like this to do video walkthroughs of properties, or just to get some smooth kind of walking so it's not so jerky. The DJI Osmo Mobile 5 is what I'm rocking. It's pretty cool. Folds up really small. I like it.
Cool. The one I want to share, we've been really geeking out on short form video, TikTok, Reels, Shorts, all that stuff. And we're just always looking for apps. I think one of the most common things that we all get is like, how do I edit this stuff? Who am I going to send it to? I got to hire someone on Fiverr. Like, no, you don't need to do that. There's apps for that. So there's a really cool built-in app in Instagram for making Reels where you can just take a bunch of photos and videos and it'll stitch it together into a video for you. But if you really want to take it to another level, have some more customization, have some more options when it comes to creating short-form videos, there's an app called Beat Leap, Beatleap, Beat Leap. Really good. You just take all the clips. Like I was out at the river this weekend. I could take all the photos and videos that I shot while I was out there. It'll stitch it all together, add some music, sync the photos and videos to the music, make it look like had a professional edit it, make me look like a total badass, which will ultimately get me more traction on the videos that I create. So check out Beat Leap. Heard a lot of good feedback on that and just started using it myself.
I'm downloading it right now.
Cool. Well, hopefully you guys got a lot of value out of the show. Again, I'm Kyle Whissel with eXp Realty in San Diego.
And I'm Bryan Koci. I'll see you guys next week.
Wait. Before you leave, I want to share some more tips and tricks that we're using in our business to take it to that next level. Just click right here. And don't forget to subscribe. Click right here.